In this video, we'll go over the things I've learned along the way to building a 7-figure self-publishing business. So I've been publishing since late 2015, so almost 8.5 years. And if I knew the things I will discuss in this video, my journey would have been a lot easier. So the first thing is not doing enough research. The first 2 books that I published, I had success with. The first one made $500 the first month. Second one did around $200. But then after that, I didn't do good research. So I published books in topics that either didn't have enough demand, there weren't enough people searching for that topic, or the competition was too high. So if we imagine that this is Amazon and this is our book, then what different ways do we have to get traffic to our book? First of all, we have search. So search is, let's say we publish a book on the vegan diet, let's say, vegan diet. Then our book might show up here on the results. So that is what we want. But if we take a look, this one has over 50,000 results. So I don't think that the book will show up on page 1 unless we're an established author or we're driving a lot of traffic, so we get a lot of sales. However, this is one way that we can get sales, and this is most likely the best way if you're starting off as a complete beginner, is to focus on ranking for different keywords. But we have another way, and another way is customer also bought. So if we take a look at this cookbook right here, we can see that we also have frequently bought together. So your book might show up here, or they might show up here in more items to explore. But they are all related to the vegan diet, most likely, the books that show up here. So we want a specific topic that our book discusses. Another way that we can get traffic to our book is through sponsored ads. So we can either show up on some product pages, they have sponsored items underneath, and you can also show up when people search the vegan diet. You can pay to be one of the top results. The fourth way that we can get eyeballs on our book on the Amazon website is through categories. So you either got the Kindle store, you can go here, Kindle ebooks, and you have different categories here where people can select and they may find your book here. Or you also have the print bestseller list, and you also have audiobooks bestseller list. So those are the main ways that you get traffic on the Amazon website. Now, I've seen Amazon run ads for some of my books on YouTube and other places, and that's one interesting thing, is once you start getting a lot of sales for your book, then Amazon may use your book as a lead magnet to get customers onto the Amazon website. However, we should not rely on that, but sometimes they also send out emails to the people that are following the author page or to people that may be interested. But that is, if you get a lot of sales for the book, that could be a way to get additional sales. But otherwise, if you have an audience already, then of course you can be driving traffic from your email list, you could be driving traffic from YouTube, from other social media channels. So you have many different ways, but in the beginning, if you're starting off and you don't have an audience, then these are your ways that you get traffic. And I think this one, the search, is the main one. So let's discuss the second mistake that I did. It was not spending enough money on covers. And I think I also did at least one cover myself using Canva. So that's not something I recommend if you're not a professional designer. It's hard to design a really good cover. Imagine if you've designed for less than a year and you're trying to compete with books that have designers that worked for 10 plus years. It's going to be hard. They're going to see things that you don't see. For example, maybe it's the color combinations, maybe it's the size of the font, maybe it's the font type they use, maybe it's the image on the cover, all these components. And I think that it's good if you have design knowledge yourself. That is always a plus. However, it's not necessary. The thing that you need is to be able to judge what is a good cover, what is not a good cover. And I think one of the main things is what is on the cover in terms of the image. Does it make sense? And there can be many different components that you want to take into consideration. For example, maybe you want to show people of different skin colors on the cover so your book feels inclusive. It's many different small details like that can make a difference. And people do judge a book by its cover. So I would say do not, if you're going to pay, let's say $1,000 or $1,500, or you're going to spend a lot of time writing the book, then don't let the cover be the thing that stands in the way from people clicking on your book and buying the book. The next thing I want to discuss is working too much in the business instead of working on the business. So at one point I was doing the writing, I was doing the formatting, I was managing the ads, I was sending the files, I was doing pretty much everything except the cover design. Maybe I did it for 1 or 2 books. What I realized was that all my time was spent working in the business, and when you're focused like that, it's very hard to put a strategy in place and see beyond the trees. So you want to lift yourself away so you can see the forest for the trees, and you can have an overview, and you can see, okay, if I move this piece on the chessboard over here, then I will get this result, etc., etc. So I like to have an overview and see if I do all these things, if I publish these books, then this will be the result. And of course you can do that, and you can shift from being in the business and then working on the business. And in the beginning, maybe this is what you need to do, and that's fine. But once you're at a point where your books are generating income, and let's say $1,000, $2,000 a month, then you want to look at ways that you can leverage your time by hiring virtual assistants. So for example, you could hire virtual assistants from the Philippines or from different countries where, for example, $5 an hour goes a long way. And depending on where you are at in your journey, this can always be something that you can improve on. Even me at this point, I can improve. For example, last week I sent a task to my manager, another one which I've been doing for years. If you can have someone prepare as much as possible, and you can be the person that goes through and does the final checks, then I think that's an ideal position to be in. So the next thing I want to discuss is working with people that are good enough, however they're not excellent, and you're working with them for too long. So I did this. I had at least 2 people that weren't, they were doing their job. However, for example, when I was sending a file or I was sending a project, they would say, okay, or one of them would say, I will get this done today. And then what happens, the day passes and then nothing has been sent to you, or things like that really bothered me, because I don't think it's good that we check the messages. For example, I told this person several times, if you're reading the message, make sure that you either write down the task or you do it right away. And if the task takes less than 5 minutes, then do the task right away. But otherwise, don't check the messages on your phone, because if you just check the messages on your phone and you answer something like, I will do this later, what happens? Well, you forget about it if you haven't written it down. So that's what happened time and time again. It didn't just happen with me, it happened with other team members. And the other person that I hired were very good in performing the step-by-steps of a task. However, when it came to critical thinking, when you need to think, okay, something might have changed, then they weren't performing in terms of being able to think for themselves or see that, okay, this doesn't make sense anymore. I can't simply do this because the things have changed. So you ideally want people that are able to think for themselves and at the bare minimum tell you when something doesn't make sense. So they don't need to necessarily solve the problem. However, that's the best thing if they're able to at least come with options. So for example, they encounter something and they come with you with options for this is how to solve it, 1, 2, 3, and this is the option I would advise. That's the ideal situation. But some people, when something changes, it's very hard for them to go beyond the instructions. So this resulted in the team not being super motivated anymore, or they were very frustrated at these people. So when you have someone that's not performing, then that's dragging down the other people on the team. So that's why I would say that yes, you can give feedback once, give a warning, but if they don't make any changes, then just stop working with them, hire a new one. It's easier to hire an A player from the start instead of trying to develop a C player into an A player. So number 5, overemphasizing on what the competition is doing. So there's a saying, winners focus on winners and losers focus on winners, something like that. I think it's good to do research based on what the competition is doing, because you have a lot of data, for example, the customer reviews, and you can, from the customer reviews, you can see, okay, this doesn't make sense to include in the book because they're complaining about it, and this thing people absolutely love, so we should probably make sure to include that in the book. But if we focus too much on the competition, for example, oh, they got one more review. I remember doing that in the beginning. Oh, they now have 20 more reviews than my book has, and it just stresses you out and it's unnecessary. Instead, the focus should be on the customer and thinking, okay, how can we make the customer have the best possible experience? And it also becomes more fun if we, instead of focusing on the competition and beating the competition, we focus on making the best possible book we can, the best possible brand, giving the best possible experience, thinking, okay, how can we provide even more value to the reader? Can we provide a lead magnet such as the checklist so they have an even easier time to do this thing that we're discussing in the book? So that's something I wish I did earlier, is shifting my focus to the readers instead of focusing on the competition. Number 6, it was spreading my focus on too many different topics. When I analyzed the results from the books earlier this year, or in late 2023, I discovered that I had different brands that were representing 80% of the income. So maybe you're familiar with the 80-20 rule, which states that 80% of the results will come from 20% of the actions, or in this case, books. So I think this is true. I think also there's a little bit of a dichotomy, because sometimes it is good to test different things. So early on, I think it's good to publish in not just one niche, but to see, okay, where do I get the most results? But then once you see, okay, this is where I'm getting the most results, then consider focusing on that and building on that. So I will make a visual here. Let's imagine we have a book here, and then we have a book here, and then we have a book here, and all these books, they're related to each other. So what happens? This book leads to people seeing and potentially buying this book, and the same goes with this one. And not only that, but they can buy this one, and this one can buy from that one, and so on. So they're building on each other. And what happens more is that maybe you have an email list, you're sending people in your book, you're sending to the email list, and then also from the email list, you're sending people to your books. So you got all these different connections, and As we discussed earlier, we also saw the frequently bought together and customers also bought. So if you're sending people from your email list to your books, then they will, if the same customers are buying several of your books, then they will show up as frequently bought together, which is also very powerful. So you will have many different ways of snowballing. So all of a sudden this book becomes even bigger and bigger and bigger. And compare this to publishing many different books like this on different unrelated topics, and just imagine that there's darkness between them. So they have no way of building on each other. You have no way of building a brand from these books. It's just darkness. So in the long run, I think this is the winning strategy. You want to build a series of books that can build on each other. So think about a snowball. What happens once it starts off very, very small, but once you roll it, it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So number 7, the shiny object syndrome. So in the beginning, after 6 months, I strayed and did a lot of other, or not a lot, but I did a few other business models. I tried affiliate marketing, I did blogging, I tried some drop shipping from eBay to Amazon or vice versa, I don't remember. But I did that for 6 months and I saw no results. So I'm grateful for that, because I've seen a lot of people come and go, and some people come back to publishing after 3 years and they say, well, I tried all these different things and publishing is still the thing that is paying my bills, even though I neglected it for 3 years. So now I want to get back to it. And 3 years, that's a lot longer than 6 months. So a lot of things will have changed when it comes to publishing in 3 years. So it's almost like you have to start over from scratch at that point. This is something that, yes, it was a mistake, but I'm super grateful that I did, because let's say I were to not go through this experience, then I probably would have stopped and potentially tried to do it at a later point, and then it would have cost me a lot more. So after that one, even though it was painful, I just kept going. I remember I listened to Earl Nightingale, and he said something along the lines of, there's nothing more sad than to see a man jump from opportunity to opportunity, not realizing that he stands in his own acres of diamonds. So there's a story about a man, he goes out digging for gold, and then he goes to all these different rivers and all these different places, and I think he ends up drowning in one of those rivers. And then someone else comes and buys the land that he lived in, and he starts one day digging in that land for some reason, and he discovered the biggest gold mine in Africa. And that story resonated with me at that time, and I realized that I need to get publishing to work or go under in the process. I don't have a B plan. I would simply focus on the A plan. And when you do that, I'm reading a book now called The Diary of a CEO. He says that when you remove the B plan, you become much more motivated and also more likely to succeed. So he took an example where some students, they were doing some sort of test, and then some of the students were told that if you do not succeed with this one, then you also have these different ways of getting the candy or whatever. And they saw that the people that were told that they had other ways to get to the goal or what they wanted, they performed way poorer on the test. So not having a B plan, I think, is a very good strategy if you want to succeed in anything. So number 8, compromised content quality. So what I did was I trusted the writers too much in the beginning. I didn't do enough checks in terms of quality control. My English wasn't as good when I got started, so my English has developed a lot since I started self-publishing. One thing I wish I did earlier on was to bring on an editor who could double check. And in the beginning, it was 8 years ago, I sometimes didn't do the proper plagiarism checks. That was also one thing. I received a manuscript that was copied from a website, There were spelling mistakes in certain manuscripts that I received, a lot of them. And I remember one time I received several audiobooks where the narrator was coughing and doing a lot of other different sounds. I remember the feeling of that, because I put in the job post, the audio files need to be ready for publishing, edited without mistakes, but you need to double check. It's what I've found, because especially in the beginning, there needs to be a lot of double checking, because after a while then you will start to see if the person is reliable or not. But in the beginning you don't know a lot about the person, and they might say that they're the greatest thing, but their work might tell another story. Either do the double checking yourself or the editing yourself if you're great at English, but otherwise I would put someone who is educated or has experience as an editor to do quality control for the manuscripts, and also listen through the audiobooks to see if there's mistakes in, for example, pronunciation or different sounds that shouldn't be in the audiobook. So the number 9th mistake that I did was overestimating others' commitment, thinking that people would care as much as I did. It turns out they don't. No one cares about your business or your life as much as you care about your life. And I remember training for the Muay Thai fight. I trained twice a day. I was not very focused on publishing at that point. The business was still running, books were being published. However, when I returned after that in 2022 in spring, I realized it was almost every day I realized a mistake. Something that to me was obvious. How can we do this? But to someone else, it's not obvious. They don't see the things the way you do, and perhaps they don't care as much either. So that's something I always do now, is from time to time go in and check, is this being done as it should be? And once it's not being done as it should be, and you put the trust in the person, then you need to make it clear that this is completely unacceptable and this can never happen again, and make sure you put this in a checklist so that there's no way that this can happen. So just like a pilot has a checklist before they take off, people on your team should have a checklist when they deliver the work to ensure that there aren't any mistakes that could have been avoided. Number 10 mistake that I did is losing sight of why I got into self-publishing in the first place. So I went into self-publishing because I wanted freedom, and I realized now that the business in many instances in my journey became all-consuming. It was the thing I woke up thinking about, and it was the thing that I went to sleep thinking about. And I think that at certain points in your journey that might be necessary. However, if you're constantly stressing about a certain goal or losing sight of your initial reason why you started self-publishing, so for me it was freedom, then I think it's good to reassess from time to time, because what I've realized is that I set a goal and then I hit the goal and then I simply set another goal, and I think that's good in some regards. However, in some regards, we don't want to forget other things in life as well. So self-publishing, it's a great vehicle for achieving freedom to do other things in your life, focus on your family, or go traveling, or focus on something that you are really passionate about besides self-publishing. So I think it's good to go back from time to time and think, okay, why did I start self-publishing? So that's it. Hopefully you received value from this video, and if you did, hit the like button, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.